Every week, 25 million Americans tuned in to hear that familiar piano in the line. Those were the days. But behind the laughter, Carroll O'Connor was fighting a private war over those very notes. He skipped rehearsals, demanded more money, and wanted a completely different sound for the show. The theme song everyone remembers nearly never happened. O'Connor's original vision was so far from what aired that it would have shocked viewers. What unfolded behind the scenes was a story of pride, betrayal, and one man's determination to shape his art. In the late 1960s, Norman Lear was searching for something that could shake up American television. The country was changing fast, and the glossy sitcoms of the time didn't reflect real life. One day, while flipping through Variety, Lear found an article about a British show called Till Death Us Do Part. The headline described it as a national controversy. The series centered on a loud, angry man named Alf Garnett who constantly clashed with his liberal son-in-law about race, politics, and religion, topics American TV avoided. But instead of being cancelled, the show became a phenomenon in Britain. Lear immediately knew he'd found something revolutionary. He secured the rights, convinced it could speak to the generational divide growing in the U.S. According to Sally Struthers, who played Gloria, O'Connor may have discovered the British series first. She claimed he had loved it during a trip to the UK, and even tried to adapt it himself before Lear swooped in and took the rights. That, she said, left a lasting bitterness between the two men. Struthers herself didn't have an easy relationship with Lear either. She once revealed she had spent $40,000 trying to get out of her contract after the 5th season, claiming Lear told her he had only cast her because she had blue eyes and a fat face. The British original was far more abrasive than anything Americans had seen. Alf Garnett, played by Warren Mitchell, hurled insults at everyone. The BBC even destroyed some early episodes to avoid backlash, yet the show still earned a place among Britain's greatest programs. Lear admired it but knew it wouldn't survive untouched in the US. Alf had to be softened. That's how Archie Bunker was born. Lear drew from his own childhood to create the character. His father, Herman, was a blustering man who used to shout at Lear's mother, "Stifle yourself." That phrase became one of Archie's trademarks. Lear's father went to prison when Norman was 9, leaving the boy to navigate the chaos of adult hypocrisy. Years later, Lear turned those family wounds into comedy that exposed the absurdity of bigotry and pride. The first attempts to sell the show failed. ABC rejected Lear's pilots Justice for All, and those were the days for being too bold. CBS finally took a chance, renaming it All in the Family. They even placed a warning before the pilot, nervous about the racial slurs and political arguments it contained. Casting the right Archie Bunker proved nearly impossible. Mickey Rooney turned it down, fearing public backlash. Jackie Gleason, Tom Bosley, and Jack Warden all said no. Then Lear saw Carroll O'Connor in What Did You Do in the War, Daddy? And knew he'd found his man. Jean Stapleton was Lear's first choice for Edith. She played her as kind, gentle, but quietly strong. A woman who could undercut Archie's temper with patience and love. O'Connor later said Edith helped change America by showing women how to stand up without shouting. Casting the younger couple took longer. Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers finally won the roles of Mike and Gloria after several failed pilot versions. Struthers auditioned while sick with laryngitis, but her raw energy impressed Lear enough to cast her on the spot. Even the theme song had drama. Composer Charles Strauss originally wrote it for a full orchestra, but when the budget ran out, he played it on piano himself. That homemade sound became iconic, even though O'Connor hated it. During a 1974 contract dispute, he sued for $64,000 in back pay and demanded 12 weeks of vacation in a 24-week production schedule. The producers were so fed up they wrote a backup script to kill off Archie and replace him with his friend Stretch Cunningham, played by James Cromwell. O'Connor refused to show up to work for weeks, citing illness, though it was really protest. Meanwhile, Jean Stapleton turned Edith's imperfect singing into comedy gold. She could sing beautifully but deliberately hit one wrong note on Weren't to make the opening funny. Her off-key, heartfelt delivery helped the song become a surprise hit. In 1972, it reached number 43 on the Billboard Hot 100, and the vinyl ended up in the Smithsonian. The nostalgic lyrics, especially Mr. We Could Use a Man Like Herbert Hoover Again, were satire, but many viewers missed the joke. When All in the Family debuted on January 12, 1971, hardly anyone noticed. It ranked 55th in ratings, and critics called it crude and offensive. But slowly word spread. When the cast appeared at the 1971 Emmy Awards and won multiple trophies, everything changed. The reruns that summer drew millions. By season 2, the show was #1 in America, staying there for 5 consecutive years. One episode in 1972 became legendary, the visit from Sammy Davis Jr., who kissed Archie Bunker on the cheek. The audience laughed so long it became the longest recorded laugh in TV history. That moment, unscripted and spontaneous, symbolized everything the show stood for. Challenging social boundaries through humor. Even President Nixon ranted about it on the Watergate tapes. The show's willingness to tackle taboo topics often brought it to the edge of cancellation. CBS banned certain words and themes, but Lear fought back with what he called nuclear blackmail, threatening to walk out rather than censor himself. His defiance worked because by 1974, the show was making CBS over $200 million a year. Episodes like Edith's 50th Birthday, depicting an attempted rape, and The Draft Dodger, confronting the Vietnam War, broke television taboos and drew massive audiences. Still, behind the scenes, the war between Lear and O'Connor never ended. O'Connor wanted creative control and often rewrote scripts. Lear called him fearful and misguided. O'Connor admitted he'd been nasty and manipulative. Lear once even tried to have him fired. Their feud created some of the most electric performances on television, but it nearly destroyed their partnership. Jean Stapleton remained the show's quiet anchor. In 1978, she announced she was leaving, saying she loved Edith but wanted to move on before the role consumed her. Lear considered ending the series, but CBS convinced O'Connor to stay. The result was Archie Bunker's Place, where Edith appeared briefly before dying off-screen from a stroke. O'Connor wrote later that Edith Bunker had changed America, giving women courage to speak their minds. Years later, tragedy struck O'Connor's real life. In 1995, his son Hugh, a 33-year-old actor, took his own life after a long struggle with cocaine addiction. Days before, O'Connor had begged police to arrest Hugh's dealer Harry Perzigian. After the suicide, O'Connor went on national television and publicly named Perzigian as a partner in murder. The dealer later sued him for slander and lost. O'Connor said he thought about his son every day and would never find peace. Yet he turned his grief into advocacy, using his fame to speak about addiction and the devastation it brings to families.